To make it in business can take nerves of steel. This is the Architects of Business, Joe's weekly series of interviews with leading entrepreneurs in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. I'm Tadhg Enright, and today I'll be speaking with Shawn, whose Steeltech Sheds are beating the competition all over Europe. Shawn, thank you so much for coming and talk to us today. It's an incredible empire you've built, and it seems, from what I understand, that it's almost something you fell into, a bit of an accident almost.
Well, entrepreneurship in general, I fell into it because basically back in the 80s when I moved to Galway, I was unemployed for about a year and I couldn't actually get a job. Unemployment was quite high then, so I accidentally started my first business in Galway, and it seems to be a bit like that ever since. First
of many, though.
Yeah,
at the time.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Well, I mean, what pies were you sticking fingers in back then?
Well, it was my first year in Galway, and it's a great city to party apart from anything else. So I probably did more than my fair share of partying. And one day I was going out with this particular girl, and she said to me that evening, "I got you a job." And I said, "Right." So she said, "I got you a job painting a house." So she knew somebody needed a house painting. She said, "I told them you're a painter." And I was fine, but I don't know anything about painting. So I suppose my first business was started with a budget of about €50, because all you need to be a painter is a pair of white overalls, some business cards, a paintbrush, a roller, and away you go. So I painted the house, and it worked out. I was quite handy at it, and in no time at all I had a few lads working for me. So that was the first business up and running.
And what was it that kind of gave you the encouragement to go from just being you, the painter, or even the accidental painter, to having the group of lads working for you? I mean, how did you start to build it from that point?
Well, money is always be a motivator, so obviously the more work you can do. But I probably have a very good work ethic, which is common in the entrepreneurship world. So I mean, I wasn't afraid to work 7 days a week, and if I got a job, I never turned it down, no matter what it was. So the work just came, and I probably had a flair for sales and marketing. So that's, I think, where my talents really lie. And I was able to go out and get the work when other qualified painters, ironically, couldn't get work. So I just had I was handy at that kind of thing.
How did you set yourself apart from the competition?
I'll always remember after painting that first house, the lady said to me, "Are you busy?" And I said, "I know, it's quiet, you know." She said, "Would you advertise?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll try that." So I put an ad in the local advertiser in the classified section, and the ad said painter available. So 3 weeks later, I had no phone call, and I near enough given up. And I looked at the paper, and there's about 50 other guys, painters available. So I said, "You know what, I'll try it one more time, but this time I'll be a little bit different." So I put another ad in, and this time it said rooms painted from £15, paint included, no charge if unsatisfied. So by doing that, even though I didn't really think about it that much at the time, but by doing that, I was guaranteeing the work, don't pay me if you're not happy, and I was working really cheap. Of course, the magic word I used there was from £15. I never painted a room. So the phone started ringing, and once the phone starts ringing, it's then up to yourself to go and meet the potential client and close the deal. So it sounds simple, but it works.
Well, there's a lot of people who go to school for a long time to learn how to do that, and you just kind of got there by looking at one mistake you made and correcting it.
Well, unfortunately, they don't teach entrepreneurship in schools, so I don't think that is something you can learn in school. And I won't say it's something you're born with, but you kind of grow up with it. And I left school quite early, so I was quite creative, and a little bit of creativity is a good thing in business.
Join the dots for me, though, between painting houses to building sheds, because I'm not sure I quite see the link.
Oh, it's a bit of a stretch. The painting business went quite well for a number of years, and my next business was selling coal. And again, one of the odd things about any business is I knew absolutely nothing about them before I started. So one day I thought, how hard can that be? I seen lads going door to door selling coal. So I went to the local wholesaler and I said, how much is a ton of coal? So I quickly realised you could profit margin of around €4 on a bag of coal. So I thought, that can't be hard.
And were things not busy with the painting?
In the winter time, the painting got quieter, and I was starting to get tired of it anyways, because painting, I just got a bit bored with that. So I was looking for something else. sometimes I can wander off in too many different directions, but I'm trying to control that.
Yeah, I'm trying to spot the pattern here now. So,
Yeah.
okay, so I get the coal. You saw people selling coal while you were painting houses, and you said, well, I'll get into
we were
that.
quieter in the winter time because
Yeah.
you couldn't do outside work.
And
you know,
then when
so-
you sold them coal, they needed somewhere to store it. Is that how we get to the sheds?
Yeah, we're definitely getting there. Yeah, so then I sold the painting and decorating business and concentrated on the coal business, which was built up into quite a substantial business. And that's where we see the gap in the market for the shed business, because delivering coal into people's houses, you'd see timber sheds. People might be on after getting a new timber shed. Within a week or two, the door wouldn't close. Within a year, the roof was leaking. So we thought there's got to be a better way. And round about the same time, a lot of people were getting new oil tanks. They had the old square steel oil tank and they were starting to leak, so they were replacing them with plastic tanks. So we'd be delivering coal. At the end of the evening, we'd have an empty truck, ideally, and you'd see these oil tanks. So you'd suggest to the customer that, do you want that taken away? And they'd be delighted to get it taken away. So we'd charge a small fee for that. And we ended up with a whole load of these steel oil tanks. So following summer, we said, what are we going to do with all these steel oil tanks? So I came up with a great idea. We'll just turn them into coal bunkers.
Were you recycling? Oh no,
Yeah.
coal bunkers.
Yeah, turn the steel oil tank. They were square shaped. They were perfect for a coal bunker. So you just chopped them up, re-welded them, put a door on the top and a hatch on the bottom, and there was your coal bunker. So
Was that the beginning of Steeltech?
That was the beginning of the steel business, and I was fortunate. I had guys working with me who were really talented in that area. So that went well. And then we thought, at the same time we're looking at these timber sheds and just joining the dots, we says, why don't we make a steel shed? So that's where it started.
And the rest of it.
We never looked back, yeah.
Yeah. Listen, take me back to a little bit earlier, because, most people don't roam around spotting business ideas and executing them in the way that you managed to. Was there any bit of entrepreneurialism in your family when you were growing up?
Well, I come from a farming background, and I think every farmer in his own way is an entrepreneur, and just to survive has to be fairly smart and work hard. They're always throwing problems. Even this year we see the drought is causing them significant problems. So brought up on a farm, every day of the week there's problems, there's issues and there's opportunities. So you're seeing it around the dinner table. As I say, it's not taught in our schools, so where else are you going to learn it except at home? And I was probably fortunate. My parents encouraged us. So from, I think we were age about 7, my brother was about 8, and at that stage we had a pig farm, so they gave us a loan, and we bought our first piglet. We were then given a loan to provide the feeding for this piglet, and when it was sold, we paid back our loan and kept the profit.
This is the bank of mum and dad, is it?
Yeah, so that's our entrepreneurial education starting at a very early age.
And that is, and that's very deliberate education, it would seem.
And it really worked. It was a very simple process. There's your piglet, you feed it, you sell it to the factory, you make a profit, you don't keep the profit, and now you buy 2 piglets. So by age 13 I had quite a lot of piglets, and business was good. Only thing was I hated pigs. so
what did they ever do to you?
I just didn't like farming. So I sold my pigs and started my second business at age 13, which was apple trees, because I always liked horticulture. So I bought 18 apple trees. Unfortunately, they didn't produce any apples. So the second business, that was the first lesson. The second business didn't work out too well. But entrepreneurship was taught at home. That's where we learned it.
Yeah, because I know it's something you talk a lot about. You don't believe it's taught adequately in schools.
No, not at all. No. I think there's a gap. The education system, it's something I feel quite strongly about. Something like coding, there's a massive scarcity across the world for people with computer science, and coding is not even taught in secondary schools. Finance in general is something that everybody needs in their lives, no matter what line of work they're in. And there's very little education on how to handle your finance. And of course, entrepreneurship is unheard of in our education system.
Because you touch on something there, which I think is quite telling. In a bygone era when the average person was a bit more of a hustler, shall we say, in terms of just scraping a living. You got into business almost by accident. And in the modern age where lots of us are going out looking for safe jobs, you almost put entrepreneurship on this kind of special pedestal as if there's some kind of secret sauce to it, when really it's just about buying and selling things and hopefully at a profit. There's
a couple of essential ingredients. I mean, creativity is very important. So having an open mind and thinking differently and not being afraid to have an opinion, not going with the crowd is very important, and a good work ethic. If you're not prepared to work hard and put the hours in and have some kind of vision that there's light at the end of the tunnel, They're essential ingredients in the entrepreneurial world. But the safe job, I think the safe job is a terrible idea.
It's dying out as well, isn't it?
And I say to my own kids, you know, and I sometimes I give talks in schools and things like that, and sometimes I think the teachers might want me back because, you know, if you're 16 or 17 and everybody's asking what do you want to be or what do you want to do, you know, I mean, I say to them, look, at least 50% of you will be working on something that hasn't been invented yet. So the idea of having a carefully planned out life is terrible. You know, one should do what they enjoy doing, and a couple of changes in the career path along the way is a good idea, in my opinion. Yeah.
What was your own time at school like?
School wasn't great. I mean, I try and take the positive out of everything. I was dyslexic in school, and dyslexia back then probably wasn't that people weren't aware of it. So basically, I had no idea what was going on in school, and would have got a lot of grief from teachers every single day. They basically told me I was the most stupid person in the class, and I'd never amount to anything. So for a young lad, that's not a nice thing to hear.
No.
So I left school at 14. Couldn't wait to get away from it, and started my first job. So fortunately, the education system has improved a lot since. But education, the great thing, as I say, I always take the positive if I can out of everything. And, you know, when a child is born, it's 100% creative. But by age 20, 90% of the creativity is educated out of a person. And I don't want to sound like I'm against education. I'm a huge fan of education. But creativity in itself is so important. And in my case, my creativity was intact. So that was a big advantage.
Did you feel, or reminded, how did you feel at school at a time when there wasn't the same even awareness of conditions like dyslexia? I mean, can you remember how it felt?
Look, it's going back a while. You know, if your teachers are telling you you're stupid every day, you start to believe them eventually. And for some reason, you know, I was able to rise above that. And I'm very conscious of children nowadays. You know, they might be in the back of the class and they might know what's going on, but they could in fact be the smartest guy in the room given an opportunity, because absolutely everybody has a talent in some area. And that's what I say about coding as an example. It's so unfortunate. There's people out there who are gifted and they'll never know because they didn't get the chance. While in the meantime, something like Irish, which I have a real problem with, is compulsory. I have nothing wrong with the Irish language, but does it really have to be compulsory?
But you seem to think that schools actually stifle creativity.
Unfortunately, they do.
Yeah.
They do. And I probably won't have too many fans as teachers, but it's not, you know, it's the nature of the beast. But the opportunities that teachers have is brilliant. I'll always remember I was sitting on a plane coming from the States, and I was chatting to this lady all the way back to Ireland, and she was a retired doctor, and as you do on a plane, you talk about everything. So she said she was from a small village in County Clare and all her brothers had done extremely well. And I said, you were brought up in the 50s in a small village in County Clare. You must have been well off when you got a good education. And she said, no, we weren't. And I said, how did you all do so well? We had a brilliant teacher. So that teacher changed the lives of so many people because he genuinely cared. So the opportunities that teachers have, it's the one profession where they can really make a difference.
A powerful position to be in.
It is, yeah.
So you left at school at what, 14 did you say?
Yeah.
And why did you leave then?
Well,
what
my
did
parents
you do?
didn't want me to leave school, and I of course did. So I just went to, I love cars, so I thought I'd get a job in a garage. So I went to every single garage looking for a job as an apprentice mechanic. One day I got a job, so I came home to my parents, I told them I got a job, and they thought, well, maybe he'll make a mechanic, you know, we let him off. So it didn't work out too well, but I got out of school. So. And
that was the main thing, as it were. But I suppose it put you onto the path you're on now, the entrepreneurial path.
Well, into a work environment, you know, and I was happy working and making money, of course.
Yeah.
So the mechanic thing didn't work out too well. I stuck it for about 2 years. But
how long until you started, I suppose, you know, reviving those piglet buying and selling skills that your parents had taught you so diligently?
The next thing I probably, that's 14. So by age 16, I started. You'll see people on the markets now selling shrubs and trees and plants. Like, I'd say I was probably one of the first people to start doing that. So I basically went to street markets and started selling shrubs, trees, all that kind of thing. And I'd be sold out by 4 or 5 o'clock in the day. That actually went quite well. So that did that for a while, and I was always wheeling and dealing with cars and all kinds of things. So,
but it wasn't always entrepreneurialism. You were taking jobs in the meantime. So it doesn't sound like you were kind of maybe convinced that you could strike out by yourself.
I probably didn't even know what the word entrepreneurial meant back then. My focus was just making money, and that was it. Like, I mean, years later before I started to say, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, so. It evolved. That's what I'd say. Yeah.
These days, I suppose people who go into business, a lot of them, not all of them, but they feel like they have to have, several letters after their name and MBA this and BCom that. You've gotten to where you've gotten to through the university of your life. Do you think is there too much of a focus on academic education?
It depends on the individual. Academic education is for certain people, and in Ireland right now, and Britain the same, there is this focus on sending all children to third level schools, whereas the rest of Europe don't have that focus, and it's ridiculous. Why would you be sending kids to school that have no particular academic hunger? They want to be, they're good with their hands, they're good with a trade, they can be carpenters, electricians, plumbers, welders. There's a massive gap in the market, and those are good jobs. They're great jobs, and the people are doing what they're good at, and there's great opportunity as well for starting a business if you have any of them trades. So there should be more focus on trades and not trying to push the kids into third level. They don't even want to go there, and there's a little bit of snobbery around that where people think, oh well, my Johnny, he's got so many points and he's doing this and he's doing that. And if they actually talk to their kids and they're going to third level school, 60% of them are on the phone looking at Facebook while the lecturer is there. Like, I mean, I'd never last as a professor because I'd be saying, get off the phone while you're here, and it's party, and that's what they do for a couple of years, and the parents are paying for this when the real talent is a trade. So it's not for everybody. So
how do you spot entrepreneurial skills in a youngster, even in a grown-up? I mean, if you're trying to screen potential candidates for the next big business thing, what are the traits you think an entrepreneur really has to have?
Well, it's there's a debate there. Are we born entrepreneurs, or can you become an entrepreneur? And I believe you can become an entrepreneur. So there's essential ingredients. As I said earlier, the work ethic. You got to be prepared to work. This idea of finishing at 5 in the evening or 6, or not working Saturday or Sunday, that does not exist in the entrepreneurial world. So you got to have the work ethic, and have a passion for something. I mean, if you're doing something you enjoy, you don't see it as work. And then there's a financial aspect. If you want to make money, and trust me, a lot of entrepreneurs lose money. And I think it might have been Steve Jobs said, we all make mistakes. So make as many mistakes as you possibly can in your early 20s and get them out of the way. So an entrepreneur cannot be afraid of making mistakes. It's so important to make mistakes because that's where we really learn.
And what about, I suppose, nerves and the stamina it takes to take a mistake and actually overcome it and learn from it and build something else?
You wouldn't want to be worried what people are saying. I think it was Oscar Wilde once said the only thing worse than people talking about you is people not talking about you. So if you make a mistake and you lose everything and you fail miserably and everyone's talking about you, don't pay the slightest bit of attention, because the knowledge you have learned along the way, and you will bounce back with determination, you will always come back. And you will get there eventually. Some of the greatest successes, I guarantee you, have had huge losses as well. There's nobody gets there without making lots of mistakes.
Yeah, we're full of inspirational quotes today. Steve Jobs, Oscar Wilde. Yeah. Give us a Shawn Brett original, will you? When did you realise you were onto something really big with Steeltech? What was that kind of moment?
I suppose Steeltech, it grew slowly, and a solid business. And the very first day, I remember when we came up with the name Steeltech Sheds, and we were putting a sign up in the garden, and the sign wasn't even up. I was holding the sledge, and a car drove in, and he was our first customer, and he bought a shed, and he was really happy with the product, and that gave us a great inspiration to continue. And because it was something new, it was unique. There was nobody else doing this, so. Back then we didn't have much competition, so it wasn't a hard sell, and the business continued to grow. So I still see it as a company that's in its infancy.
Really?
There's a lot of potential out there.
And how long has it been on the scene of the state?
24 years.
24 years. So it's in its 20s, quite literally.
Well, yeah, but
the best years are yet to come.
Yeah, there's so much opportunities out there and so much potential.
Listen, for those who don't know an awful lot about the kind of the market in which you operate, I mean, certainly for me, when I was reading up on what you do, you know, steel sheds, I wouldn't have necessarily thought it was that revolutionary, but it seems like it has been, and it was at the time.
Yeah, well, I suppose the big thing with it is it's maintenance free. It has a 10-year guarantee, so there's lots of advantages, unlike the traditional timber shed that you got to paint every year. But it's evolved. It started with just a simple steel shed, steel garages. Now we're doing a lot more of the home offices and the architecturally designed offices, garden chalets, 1 and 2 bed chalets, greenhouses. So a lot of other products and new products all the time. So
it's kind of out. How do you classify it? Outbuildings, garden buildings, or
garden rooms, I suppose. You know, sheds and garden rooms. Yeah. So. And, you know, we're even starting to, and we're trying to stay away from the housing, but we did one recently down in Cork. It was a 3-bedroom house, and the shell goes up in one day, and then carpenters, electricians come back, and the whole thing is finished in a week. So there's potential there for growth is massive. You
touch on housing there, and obviously it's an enormous issue in Ireland right now. And I mean, is there a solution in what you do, even on a temporary basis, that, you know, maybe planners should facilitate people who want to have a studio flat down the bottom of their garden in a building made by somebody like you?
I'll avoid talking about planners because I might only get upset. But California has a similar housing problem to Ireland. And they've recently changed the laws over there where you can now put a 1 or 2 bed chalet into your garden without planning permission. So it makes sense within reason. Here you will not get planning permission for a 1 or 2 bed chalet 9 times out of 10 because planners
don't want to know.
I can't talk about planners, but
it sounds like you've been burnt.
Yeah, I'm not going there. So California, as I say, have changed the law, and I have a friend over there who contacted me recently because he was putting a chalet in his garden, and it's going to cost him between $200,000 and $300,000. So he's just saying, Shawn, there's a massive opportunity because, you know, we have a 1-bed chalet starting at €15,000. So if I'm not here next year, you know where I'll be.
I know where you'll be. You'll be living it up in California. Yeah.
But the law is not going to change because government, you know, the nature of politicians, they just need to they have to reapply for the job every 4 years, so they won't do anything too controversial. They don't want to upset anyone. They're afraid to do anything. It's unfortunate, and then people in those jobs, there's no creativity there. The housing crisis could be solved. It could easily be solved.
I'm sure there's many people would say, you know, fair enough, it's probably not the greatest idea to start putting buildings in gardens, but, you know, we're living in a kind of an emergency right now. When you see,
we are within reason. You know, within reason. You don't have to turn every decision down. Does it take 9 months to get a decision? Just, you know, I mean, like, you can put an extension on your house without planning permission, but you cannot put a chalet in your garden. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And as I said, they've done it in California and it's working. So they have identified the problem and they've come up with a solution. It's one solution. There's a lot of different solutions out there. Loads of people with loads of ideas, but getting people to change, politicians, not easy.
Shawn, forgive me, I'm not sure if you think this might sound a bit blunt, but would you say you kind of were making Steeltech Sheds up as you went along? Or was there...
Look, you could say we're making it up as we go along, but innovation is crucial in any business. And without innovation, a business will go backwards. Standing still is going backwards. So,
but has there been ever a time or where you kind of stopped and said, right, okay, I'm going to start conforming to some kind of business norms here. I'm going to write a business plan and do all the kind of things that modern busisembusinesses do to attract finance.
We talked a lot about education and leaving school at 14. I'm now back in college. So tomorrow and the next day we're in the University of Dublin in the business college. So I've gone back to college all these years later. And
really? What are you studying?
Well, it's Enterprise Ireland that are sponsoring it, so they're paying for half it. It's called Go Global for Growth. And what they do is they take 3 people out of every company, 3 of the senior people, and it's a 6-month course. And so far, we're finding that very beneficial. Yeah.
And I'm guessing the secret's in the name there, Go Global for Growth. So this is teaching you how to spread yourself farther across the world.
It is. And, you know, when we talk about ambition, it's an important part of a business: innovation, ambitious, continuous growth. As I say, standing still is going backwards. So the ultimate ambition is world domination in the steel shed business. So go global for growth is essential.
World domination.
Yeah,
Don't set your sights too high, whatever you do. What do you think about that, actually? The likes of Enterprise Ireland kind of investing in a company like yours, investing the time to sponsor you through that. I mean, it's a great support, I would imagine. It
is, and I have to be honest, we connected with Enterprise Ireland about 2 years ago, and I thought, if they're giving some money, we'll take it. I now realise that it's great to get grants, but the knowledge they have is fantastic, and the support, it's very impressive. Particularly we went into the UK and we made a lot of mistakes, and had we taken on the support of Enterprise Ireland, we might have avoided the mistakes. So Enterprise Ireland is a fantastic organisation, very happy with them.
What you mentioned mistakes there going into the UK. What happened? As
I say, everyone makes mistakes in business, and get them out of the way in your 20s is ideal, but unfortunately we continue to go on and make mistakes. So we follow the same model as we have in Ireland. So in Ireland we have 16 showrooms where you have a large display of sheds, garages. So we opened 8 in the UK, all in good locations beside garden centres. So what you do is you put in a display of sheds, garages, greenhouses, garden rooms, home offices, chalets, that kind of thing, and then you put in 1 or 2 salespeople in each yard, do a lot of marketing, and hopefully it takes off. Unfortunately it didn't. It's a completely different way of doing things over there. So we didn't get the footfall, and we wasted a lot of money advertising. And when we now look back, of course, hindsight is 20/20 vision. When we look back, we can see quite clearly where we made the mistakes.
Equally, though, you can see where you assume that would work. It seems like a pretty straightforward approach.
Yeah,
and why didn't it work?
I'd said I wish I knew the mistakes I'd make before I start, and we'd avoid them. But we missed it, and when I think about it, it was obvious. Because if we go back here 20 years, we sold both timber and steel sheds. So people came in, and it was 50% timber, 50% steel. Now 20 years later it's 99% steel. So it has evolved. It's like an education process, and people learn that, this is a far superior product. It costs more money, but it's a lifetime investment. Whereas in the UK, when they hear of a steel shed, they think of the thing you can buy in the local hardware store. It's a cheap steel shed, very cheap. It's flimsy. It will fall apart eventually, and there'll be condensation problems. So they associated all steel sheds with that. So unfortunately, when they seen Steeltech steel sheds, they didn't even come into the yards.
So how have you rectified that mistake?
We have, as I say, it was an expensive mistake. So of the 8 yards, 5 of them have closed. 3 will remain open. What we're doing now is we're partnering with people on the ground, existing guys over there who are selling timber sheds. They already have the footfall and the sales, so we're partnering with them, putting displays into several locations over there, and they take on the sales. So it's more of a partnership, and that's working extremely well. So a lot of potential, because it's a huge market. So we got it right, but we certainly didn't get it right day one, and had we done more research, we might have avoided that expensive mistake.
So when you're at the top of a self-made empire, as you are yourself, and something like that goes wrong, who do you pick up the phone to kind of vent or ask for advice or help? I
suppose I'm extremely fortunate. I don't get stressed, and my favourite phrase is, the world's greatest opportunity comes in the disguise of an unsolvable problem. So a problem is an opportunity. Sometimes you mightn't see it. So we at this stage, I'd say I know more about the shed business in the UK than anybody in the UK. So we just continue to do our research. It's a big statement, though, to say I don't get stressed. Nothing stresses you? Very little, very little. I'm very aware that we're only here for a short time. So if you think about it logically, like over millions of years, you're here for less than 100 years. So it's a very short time, and the world will go on tomorrow, whether you're here or not. So, and the sun will get up tomorrow. So why would you be getting stressed over small things? I mean, so hang on, you ventured into the UK. What was it? 8 showrooms. Yeah. And that must have been. How did that compare to your business in Ireland at that stage? I mean, that must have been a big chunk of investment. Yeah, we did €1 million in turnover the first year. I think our target was 5 million, and we thought we'd get up to 100 million fairly quickly. So we didn't lose an awful lot. We did lose. It was just we got it wrong.
But the question I'm trying to get to, I suppose, is, you know, you pour all this money, a big chunk of your business, into a new market, the UK, and with the assumption that things are going to go great like they did in Ireland, and then you see the numbers not adding up in the way you'd expected them to. You're telling me there wasn't even like, you know, a little pang of like, Jesus, what's happening here? Like, or
there might have been a couple of times where I said, how did we get into this? You know, but I certainly would not lie awake at night worrying about it.
Because it'll all be right in the end?
Yeah, I mean, business is going extremely well here, so that's a good thing, you know, and we're in a very solid position now. So we could afford to take a gamble. And every time you go outside the country into a new market, it is a gamble. New products, you know, it's the nature of the entrepreneur. You have to keep trying, and not everything is going to work.
Okay. So listen, when you're not busy at work, which I would imagine is a lot of the time, but when you're enjoying yourself, what do you like to do to vent and to let off steam?
I suppose I enjoy travel. I love getting away for the weekends. It's always nice to get a few days of sunshine, especially going into the winter. I enjoy cars as well, so I have a couple of toys that I enjoy taking out.
Toys? We're not talking about Toyota Corollas here, are we?
No. Well, I like vintage cars, and I suppose the Cannonball is coming up this weekend, and there's a lot of supercars there, so I have great interest in that kind of thing, in Formula 1. And
what kind of toys do you have then?
I'm not sure I should say.
Come on.
Yeah, one of the and the more than business, some toys you should stay away from. But I have a Lamborghini Murcielago, and it's beautiful. Probably the most beautiful car ever built, but also the most troublesome car ever built. So, but it still is a beautiful car, and I've a few more vintage cars as well. So. Yeah.
Do you enjoy the ability to splash out on toys like that?
Yeah, I suppose, you know, a lot of people in business and entrepreneurship, the total focus is not money, and it's better if it isn't, because sometimes it will go wrong. But it helps. I mean, let's face it, money always makes life that bit easier. So it's nice if you don't have to think too hard about the next purchase. It's
refreshing to have a bit of honesty like that, I suppose. That, you know, you are looking at hopefully the zeros building up in your bank account at the back of a number, as opposed to just zeros altogether.
The loans are building up at the same time as well, as we continue to grow. But
you have to be passionate as well about what you're doing. I mean, do you find you become kind of, I suppose you're so involved and so invested in the company, you can't help but become passionate about the products that you have on the market?
I think so, and I think you'll find that in business, that people, you have to have the passion. I mean, there's a couple of golden rules, I say, work ethic and creativity, but in any business you must have a quality product and do our best to continuously improve the product and service, you know, and we don't always live up to it, but we try and try and give the best service. So if you say you're going to be there on a Thursday at 2:00, you do your best and continuously do your best. I often say the restaurant is probably the place where you'll really see a business or how well a business is run, because you know, how many times do you go into a restaurant and get the perfect food and the perfect service and the perfect atmosphere? To get everything perfect is not easy, but that is the challenge, and it's always a challenge, and you can't drop the ball there at all.
Have there been any sacrifices you've had to make down through the years to preserve that, you know, high quality service, be it the product or being able to make that Thursday appointment at 2? Is that part and parcel of business?
I think it is, really, yeah. I mean, you can only do your best, and sometimes you will get it wrong, you know. So if one gets it wrong, it's about trying to put it right and not have a dissatisfied customer, because that's, you know, one dissatisfied customer and they're going to tell everybody. So things will go wrong. So when they do go wrong, acknowledging that and trying your best to put it right is all we can do. Nobody gets it right all the time.
How do you find the right people who can kind of share in that attitude with you, to, you know, surround yourself by the right employees?
Well, that's definitely one of the secrets of the successful entrepreneur. Some people might think the entrepreneurs are the smartest people in the room, and I can assure you they're not. So the secret, of course, is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than oneself. But it's not just about being smart; it's about being you know, having a bit of integrity. Integrity is huge. So if you have people working for you that you can trust, and people that are going to do their best, it's singly probably the most important thing is the people that you take on over the years. I've been extremely fortunate. I have great people around me, and there'd be no Steeltech without them, for sure. But there's a book, it's called Good to Great Companies. I got a present of it a few years back, and one of the things it says is about getting the right people on the bus. Don't waste your time trying to motivate people, because if they're not the right people, you're not going to motivate them. You're only wasting your time. So try and get the right people from day one.
Do they have to match your personality?
No, and
how could they?
Yeah, well, I suppose what I really like, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs would agree, is people who challenge us. The last thing we want is someone agreeing with us. So I love it when people challenge me, and for sure you will learn more from somebody that you disagree with on everything than someone you agree with. So in the world in general, I thrive in different cultures and different ways of life. There's so much to be learned and so much knowledge out there. So I love when I'm challenged. I really thrive on that.
We were talking about Steve Jobs earlier. Are there any big business icons that you look up to or admire or try to model your own?
Well, I suppose, Elon Musk is a hero at the moment, or Richard Branson. He's a cool businessman. He's always makes it cool, and
he makes a splash.
Blonde hair waving in the wind and all that. So
is it blonde or is it a bit more grey at this stage?
Yeah, it's well dyed anyway. But he's got his own island, and some of his books are great. So he puts the fun into it, and it's so important that there should be some fun in it. And even he gets it wrong sometimes, but there's loads of them out there. James Caan is another guy I really admire. He started with absolutely nothing, and he ended up with a billion pounds company. So there's loads of books on entrepreneurship out there they're not just about business. There's usually a great story there as well. So I enjoy reading them.
So what's next for Steeltech?
Well, as I say, world domination is the ultimate goal.
The goal. So how are you going to get there, though?
Well, we might as well set the bar fairly high. Anyway, we've recently gone into the German market. We have a partner over there, and he's a guy he fits large steel buildings, and he came across us. He was on vacation in Ireland, and we've sent a couple of containers over, and so far that's working out quite well. So that's in its infancy. Again, it's a different market. They're different people, and one of the unusual things about the Germans is they almost never ask about price. The only thing they want to know is quality. Can we make it better? That's the only thing they want to know. Whereas, of course, most Irish people will tell how much is it. So that's different. So continuing to break into new markets, I'd see that, and factories in other countries.
Are there lessons that you learned in your British foray that you're hoping to, mistakes you're hoping to avoid in getting into Germany and maybe any other markets?
Of course, yeah. That, as I said, that is the great thing about mistakes. We will learn more from our mistakes than anything else. So everybody makes them, and the key is to learn from them.
Yeah. What about how are you, I suppose, capitalizing on that different desire from the German consumer for quality rather than price? Well,
that's the ideal customer, really, because you can have a bigger margin for a start. But and if you have a margin, that gives you more opportunity to get the highest possible standard. And that's continuously the road we went down, is going for a higher standard. We could easily have gone in with a cheaper product and a budget shed and that kind of thing, but we stayed away from that. So if it's 100 euros, 200 euros cheaper over a lifetime, it might be 5 cents a day or something. It's nothing. So do you want to go out to a shed where the door won't open, or do you want to go out to a perfectly dry quality shed that looks great? So our focus is very much in quality. So the Germans they're our ideal customer. So we're excited about that.
We do keep talking about sheds, and it's in the name, isn't it? But as you were saying earlier, it's not all sheds. What's the proportion of your business being kind of, should we say utility storage versus
I'd say
other
50% or less is sheds. Really, there's a lot. The utility room is another product that's fairly new, and particularly in places like Dublin, where you have small houses with a small kitchen and there's a garden there, we can have a utility room in there in less than half a day. Put your washing machine, your dryer, your fridge out there, and fill the fridge with beer. So Christmas Day, everyone won't be going home early because you have no beer.
Yeah,
that's a great product. It's selling extremely well in Dublin. The home office is something that's really taken off, because a lot of people are working from home, and we see it with traffic, and there's no need for it. You can work from home. And we did a costing on it. And if you look at the cost of driving to work on average, and driving home, and your sandwiches and your coffee, and first of all, you'll save, I think it was in the region of 7,000 euros a year by working from home. But the second thing is the hours. If you calculate all the hours you spend traveling to and from work for the entire year, you actually end up with another 2 weeks holidays. So working from home is fantastic, and it's something that's really growing.
Do you do it yourself?
I find it hard to draw the line between work and time off, because I enjoy work that much, and always looking for the opportunities or the next big thing. So
Yeah.
it's hard to draw a line between the two, really.
Do you think, looking back, have there been any times where maybe you worked too hard?
No, never. No. I mean, in my 20s, back in the early days, I worked 7 days a week. Now I still went out 7 nights a week because I like to party as well. But I always went to work, even with a hangover. It's really where it comes from. The work ethic is probably from childhood, because we worked on the farm when we were young, so we had that work ethic, and it really stands to you. So not sure how the next generation will work out. They spend all the time on PlayStation. They could be brilliant on computer science.
You sound like the type of chap who's got no regrets.
I'd like to look back over life and say absolutely no regrets. No, which is it's a good position to be in. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're talking about interesting different uses for the buildings. What's the strangest thing someone's ever asked for a shed for?
Well, I mean, they've people use sheds for just about everything and anything. I remember calling to a guy one day, and he had doves in the shed, and he used to release doves at weddings, and his wife had the other half of the shed where she was doing flowers. So they were running a lovely little business there. So a shed can be used. Everyone needs a shed. That's our motto. So loads of opportunities.
A bit like your creativity, it's only limited by the bounds of your imagination.
Yeah. Well, you only have to look at some of the businesses. I mean, Apple started in a shed. Loads of massive companies started in the garden shed.
Yeah.
So and nobody ever started a big business. So everyone starts somewhere. So the shed's a perfect place to start.
So in terms
of the Steeltech shed, even better.
You were saying earlier, exactly, no doubt. And you were talking earlier about giving advice in schools about entrepreneurship and stuff like that. So what do you tell them kids? I mean, apart from the fact that you could have a great idea in one of your own sheds.
Well, I suppose the first thing you want to do is get their attention. So I recently gave a talk to, I think it was about 160 15-year-olds in Galway. So my first question is, lads, who here wants to be a millionaire? So all the hands go up. So I said, well, statistically 2.5% of the population are millionaires. That means 4 of you will be millionaires. That's the good news, lads. Now if you listen carefully today, we can bring that up to 8 or 10. So I then go through the 7 myths of entrepreneurship, the 10 commandments, and the 7 deadly sins. And of course the second question I asked them is, are they prepared to work 7 days a week for several years with very little reward? So about half the hands went up. So there's definitely a hope. Yeah, so you go through the process, and if they do all of those things, they're in with a good chance.
Yeah. What's the difference, do you think, between those who will succeed and who won't succeed? When it fails, and fails miserably, I remember meeting a friend of mine, and he had 3 different businesses, and the guy had the worst luck I ever met, and he was really deflated. And I met him at a wedding, and I shook hands with him. I said, do you realise how lucky you are? And he said, what are you on about? I says, the amount of knowledge that you have learned. I says, I promise you, the next thing you start will work, because you have more knowledge, and you are more cautious and more careful than most people I know. And he started another business, and believe it or not, is doing quite well. So not getting stressed and worried about it if it fails. If you end up with nothing, I always say I'm at my best when I'm under pressure. So mentorship isn't just for youngsters or for people starting out. It's for people who've actually had a go a few times and it hasn't worked out.
Well, I mean, you can start. Look at Kentucky Fried Chicken. He started at 50. So you can start a business at any age. What holds people back a lot of the time is a safe job, and we talked about safe jobs. And in my opinion, a safe job is a terrible thing. I remember I had a friend once, I called him an armchair entrepreneur, because he had a job at the local city council, and he loved entrepreneurship, but the safe job, it just held him back, and then one day he died, and that was all over. So what opportunities he missed out on having such an exciting life,
Are these the kind of stories that you share with your fellow Entrepreneur of the Year kind of partners and friends?
Yeah. Oh, look, for sure everyone has a few stories, and they're a great bunch of people. I often say, when I go out Friday night with family or friends, I don't want to talk about business, because I'll quickly be left on my own, because not everybody is as passionate about business as I am. But within the entrepreneurial world and the Entrepreneur of the Year, we exchange stories and opportunities all the time. So it's a great group to be involved in.
Okay. So world domination being your ultimate goal, Are you going to be the man who takes it there, or will it be the next generation of Bretts?
Look, it could well be the next generation. I'm an optimist, but I'm a realist as well. But we will continue to grow the company. And as I say, nobody ever started a small company.
And as long as you get there, whether it's you or Brett Jr.
Yeah, I mean, once the essentials, are done, and for sure there'll be a few hurdles along the way. But, you focus on the quality of the product and the service and get your prices right and continue to expand, and the opportunities are there for sure.
Shawn, Brett, thank you very much for coming and sharing your thoughts with us today.
All right, thank you, Tadhg.
Thanks for joining us today in the Architects of Business. Thanks to our guests, Shawn Brett, our producer, Patrick Hohey, and all of the team here at Joe. Our programme is made in partnership with EY Entrepreneur of the Year. Go to EOY.ie to learn more about the finalists for this year. And don't miss out on past or future shows by subscribing for free on iTunes, on your favourite Android podcast app, or you can watch the Architects of Business on YouTube. While you're at it, check out some of Joe's other podcasts, including the GAA Hour and our movie show, The Big Review Ski. I'm Tadhg Enright. Thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye-bye.